Okay. So, does everyone see, have the recording? Because now I see less things here and I'm not really such a Zoom whiz that.
It looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I appreciate everyone being here and I want to welcome everyone. My name's Rose White and I work in the Office of Graduate Studies. And the Office of Graduate Studies works very closely with Adelante, which is a post-baccalaureate pipeline program. And the mission of Adelante is to invite Latinx and low-income students to explore graduate education and to successfully apply and attain graduate degrees. And so what we are doing here today is inviting some alumni from Chico State who have gotten through their programs, and we're going to talk a little bit with them about their path to and through their graduate education. So I would like to begin by having our panelists introduce themselves and say which program you were a part of and what you are doing now. And we'll get started with Angelica Martinez Gonzalez. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, everyone. Those who don't know me, my name is Angelica Martinez and also known as Angie. I was in the Master's in Public Administration at Chico State. I loved it. And I am currently working at the University of San Francisco as a transfer articulation advisor.
Thank you. And now Gustavo.
Yeah, hello, my name is Gustavo. I graduated from Chico State in 2017, my bachelor's in psychology, and also in 2020 with my master's in psychology as well. And currently I'm in my second year in my PhD at psychology at UCLA. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Gustavo. And Diana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Parra Villaseñor, proud Wildcat. I graduated from Chico State with my bachelor's in sociology, a minor in Chicano studies, and then went back to school years later to pursue my master's degree in education with the curriculum and instruction option. And really glad to be here.
Thank you. And we're going to get started with the first question. How and why did you pursue your degree? What was your path to grad school? And we'll have time to hear from all three of you. So Diana, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. First of all, a little bit about my family. My family is from Chihuahua, Mexico, and my parents, although they would have liked to have pursued an education, only went to 3rd and 6th grade in Mexico. And so growing up in farming community of Gridley, I grew up on a dairy farm. We were workers of the farm. 5 of us lived in a 1-bedroom house. I was not encouraged by my parents from a very traditional Mexican home. I was not encouraged to go to college. So thank God the Upward Bound program came into my life. They talked to me about college scholarships, and I was able to come to Chico State. Coming to Chico State, it was, although I had taken the college prep classes, dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome and what am I doing here and just trying to figure out everything. Had the support of Upward Bound, also was fortunate to be an educational opportunity program participant, so also had their support with Summer Bridge. And still, there was just so many obstacles to overcome. I think when you come from a traditional Latino family, you don't come to college alone. You come with your family. And so if they're dealing with something at home, you're dealing with it here also. When our program was a part of enrollment management, I remember some of the staff on campus talking about helicopter parents. And I thought, wow, helicopter parents, my whole family came to me with Chico State, not physically, but definitely emotionally. And I had them with me always, knowing that I needed to graduate so that we all could have a better future. So graduated from Chico State with a degree in sociology, and then was very fortunate to start working for the migrant education program. I had been a migrant farm worker, and so to be able to give back to that community was very rewarding. I absolutely loved it. At that time, my advisor from Chico State reached out to me and said, Diana, there's this program called Educational Talent Search, and I think you would be wonderful for it. And I told him, I love my job now. Some of my students didn't even want to graduate from high school, but I'm helping them not only graduate from high school, enroll in college. And he said, just throw your name in the hat. And so I did. And now very fortunate 25 years later to still be working with Educational Talent Search. It's a program that helps low-income first-generation college students pursue a college education. And so because I'm in education, promoting education, I thought I really need to go back to school and pursue my master's degree. It was a dream of mine. My mom had always, she's really cute. We'd buy a lottery ticket and she would say, Mija, if we win, we're going to go to Mexico and we're going to start a school because all the poor students are not able to go to school in Mexico. And so to be able to pursue a master's degree was always a dream of mine, a dream of hers. And so I was very fortunate to enroll in the master's program, even though my life was very busy with 3 daughters and directing a program. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it just took a day at a time, and was very fortunate to graduate, to have my parents in the audience, my husband who works on campus, my 3 daughters, 2 of which are Chico State students, and my other daughter who's at Chico High. So it was very rewarding to be able to speak at Latino Grad, and basically tell students, they see our lives now, but we have overcome so many obstacles and we're similar to them to be able to graduate. And so I'm now in a place to be able to help others and to give back and to share my story. And so my path took a little while to go to grad school, but so fortunate that I was able to, and blessed to be able to pursue a master's degree.
Wow, thank you, Diana. That's a wonderful path. And, just to know that over time, you can really go far. And I love hearing that. Gustavo, how about you?
Yeah, so I think it's very, I think my story is very similar to Diana's in the sense that my parents' education was also stymied by poverty, or either by trying to move to the United States for a better life and cut their education short. And so just getting to college was a huge success for me, right? I never imagined graduate school. I didn't even know what a PhD was. It wasn't until like literally my first class at Chico State. It was a history, I remember forgetting, history class, US history, 8 a.m. Professor James Mattray. And for some reason he said, my name is Dr. James Mattray and I teach history. I'm like, how? You're a doctor and you teach history. That didn't make sense to me, right? And so ever since then, I was like, oh, I could be a doctor and not go to medical school. I want to do that. And so I started actually like applying myself in school, and I learned that I actually am pretty good at school. I'm good at writing, I'm good at thinking, and I'm good at reading, I'm good at taking tests. And so it wasn't until my 3rd year in undergrad, in which I took a behavior class in psychology with a professor, and he said, any student who does extremely well in my class and wants to do research can come after me at the end of the course, and we can see if you're fit. And so I took that as a challenge. And so I worked really, really hard to get an A in that class, and I did. So at the end of the semester, I went and talked to him. I said, hey, Dr. Johnson, I did well in your class. Can I be part of your lab? And he said, yeah, of course, take me on. So I was entering my 3rd year, and I was part of a research lab, and I was the only person of color in that round table. And I felt kind of discouraging. It's like, I don't belong here. I can't reason or think at the high level that these students are, because they were already master's students, and obviously with different backgrounds than me. And also I felt like I couldn't like ask a question. I don't want to feel dumb, and I couldn't understand the words they were using as well. So it's like, how do I do this? So I just put my head down and started reading, and I got better at more confident in my words. So I decided to speak up a little bit more. And so that ultimately led me to applying for the honors program in psychology at Chico State with the same advisor, with Dr. Johnson. And I was able to develop a project with him. And then at the end of the year, I presented the thesis in front of my parents and my mom and dad, and that was just a huge, huge accomplishment. And so then I applied to graduate school and actually didn't get in anywhere after my bachelor's. I was a little disheartened because of that, but I didn't know what else to do. So I appealed, and I was fortunately able to get into the school psychology program at Chico State as well. Fast forward a year in, I realized that I didn't want to be a school psychologist because they're just gatekeepers into special education. So I didn't want to do that. And so I still had this affinity for research. So I decided to switch into the psychological sciences program, which is a little more research intense. And I was able to find perhaps like the best mentor ever, Dr. Neil Schwartz. And so he definitely helped me believe in myself, and also helped me like, well, I like to say that he's the architect of my thinking. And so he helped me develop into a scholar, what that really meant. And so when I applied to PhD programs after my master's, I once again didn't get in anywhere. And so again, I was a little disheartened. I applied to scholarships, didn't get in any. So I was, very distraught, very sad. So I told my mom about this, and she was like, "Hey, you remember?" I told my mom and dad. And they told me the story. Like, do you remember the time you went and worked concrete with your dad, and you came home with bloody hands? What did I tell you? My mom told me, you have to work with your mind, not your hands. And so once again, I started. I needed to find a way to increase my chances for the second time around for my PhD applications. So I was fortunate enough to get a job at Adelante, where once again I developed some skills that now can apply to my PhD program. So that's kind of like the how I got into it, right? It wasn't linear. I literally got ejected every step of the way. And so, but like then you have to ask yourself, like, why? Like, why would you go through that? Why would you go through the rejections and willing to face them again? Well, the bottom line is because my mom and dad didn't have the opportunity, and it turns out that I'm actually good at this. I'm good at reading, writing, and thinking. So like, what can I do with this? Well, I can now become a professor. I become a doctor, not in history, but in psychology, just like James Mattray, but different, And so that was kind of like the how and the why for me. And again, everything I do is for my family. And so they're kind of my why and help me push forward in this program here. And so, yeah, that's how I got here. It wasn't linear, but I stuck with it because of my family.
Well, and such, so much that resonates with Diana's story as well, because the path wasn't necessarily linear, and it wasn't just quick. And you both felt a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you felt like, maybe I don't belong here, but yet you both persevered and succeeded. So it's really inspiring.
Yes.
How about you, Angie? What was your path? Why and how did you decide on grad school and get there?
How, why, and what? Well, okay, so undergrad, I feel like I never had the word for it, and I didn't learn about it until grad school, imposter syndrome. The whole time undergrad, I just felt like I knew I struggled a lot undergrad. I never considered myself the smartest person, and still to this day, not smartest, but I work hard. That's the way I like to describe myself. I work hard for the things I want. How I think how and why it was kind of an accident, if I want to be honest. I did my undergrad in criminal justice. I love, still to this day, criminal justice. And I always said, okay, well, I want to get my master's in criminal justice. If, let's try this whole master's things out. I still didn't consider myself smart. I'm like, let's just see if somebody's going to accept me. And I don't know if I noticed, when I started doing my research, like there wasn't that many criminal justice programs. And then I was like, okay, so there's criminology. Let's, found it at San Diego. And then I was okay, well, let's just apply maybe at Chico, maybe 2 more years won't hurt. Staying local for 2 more years. They didn't have criminal justice. They still don't, but they do have, it's like an option. But I was thinking, okay, maybe political science. That's something close, obviously not the same, but I was like, okay. So I went in and I spoke to a few professors that were either teaching courses or were the coordinators of the program. And they actually, as Thomas, he actually, when I was explaining to him why, or what I was looking for and why I wanted to do it, you know, he and my passion and the things that I wanted to pursue at some point later in the future, he just sits there and tells me, have you ever thought about public administration? I was over here struggling with like, you know, what, you know, I was thinking of political science and criminology, and then he adds another one. I was like, and I'll be honest, it wasn't until then that I had ever really stopped and thought about what it was. So he's like, and I was like, no, I've never thought about it. He's like, I think you should maybe just sit on it and think about it. And I was like, okay. So then I go back, stress out a little bit more, do a little bit more research, and I go back and I tell him like, I think this is great. And we both, like, he starts talking to me a little bit more about the program. He connects me with the coordinator of the program and at Chico State Public Administration. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna shoot my shot. I'll be honest, I wasn't confident. I was just like, well, let's see how this goes. I think I wanted to go for my master's because I knew that a master's degree does open a lot more doors. I saw with my sister, one of my older sisters. I had seen it with, I had spoken to other people that were older as well, and I would talk, and, you know, it was just kind of through, you know, through voice of others that were saying like all these different opportunities. And I think that was one thing that, again, thinking about my family, I was like, well, how can I really help them more? You know, I do have my bachelor's, and right now it's really competitive out there. A lot of people have their bachelor's. So I was like, I want to stand out a little more. And I'll be honest, I'm not the smartest, but I do love to learn. So I was like, okay, 2 more years, let's see how this goes. I applied, I got in, I loved it. But I will say the path was difficult. Again, I like firsthand didn't know a lot of people that did their masters. And I couldn't really, the navigation of applying was just like, it was like, I feel like I was doing this blind. It was hard. I think, you know, I wasn't sure if there were times where I was like, I'm just gonna stop. Like, this is just sounds like a lot. There was, what's the GRE? You know, all these questions. I felt like I just didn't necessarily ever feel like I had answers to them. And but the people that were really helpful were professors. So thanks. So I had these amazing professors help me out. Help me with the navigation of like, okay, what's next? And then what do I do after this? And then what do I do after that? So I think, yeah, it might have. And when I got in, I was like, is this a mistake? I was like, but I'm gonna take it. If this is their mistake, it's their mistake, not mine. I was like, I'm just gonna run with this and see how it goes. And I loved it. And I really, really loved it. And I'm so happy I stuck to public administration because it was I feel like it's pretty broad. I had so many different people in my program, health, within the health field, higher education. And yeah, that's kind of why, and a little accident, but hey, we're just gonna stick with it.
I absolutely love that you also felt a lot of that imposter syndrome, but you just went, I'm going to talk to people. And you went in and talked to your professors and you talked to other people. And you didn't let that get in your way of doing something that you thought was going to make a better life for you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, and I think that's something I learned as an undergrad. There's a lot I didn't know, and I probably still don't know. But I know there's answers to those questions that I had, you know, and if even sometimes it would bounce me back and forth. And I was like, okay, just as long as I get the answer, you know, as long as I, you know, figure out what's next. Because it was hard, you know, I think, and it was very stressful. You know, it was my last semester. I was working, I was full-time, and, you know, I was just like, it was applying, and that takes a lot of your time. So it was a lot. But thankfully, like, you kind of have to use what you have, you know, and use the resources. And that's why I'm super happy now that Adelante, you know, exists. This is something that I feel like can help a lot of people kind of through their navigation. But,
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we like to have folks like you come and talk about your path, because we know there's a lot of people out there who have that same need for information, and we're hoping to be able to get that information to folks. So I'm gonna actually, I think you have touched on what our third question is. I believe it's our third question about some of the challenges. And so we'll just go with question 2, and we may revisit that if you want to expound on the challenges once we get to the third question. But Diana, what were some surprises that you experienced while you were in grad school?
Well, I think the biggest surprise was that I could do it. I think, along with Angie and with Gustavo, you take a day at a time. Even when I applied, I was like, what am I doing? Working full time. And as I mentioned, a mother and a daughter, my parents are elderly, and so helping them, just all the different roles, all the different hats that I have. I think what surprised me every day was that I could do it, that I was staying on top of my reading and my homework and presentations. And I remember one morning, because everybody in the office would say, enjoy your weekend. And I'd have class all day Saturday, or I'd have, Monday night, I'd have a class that was really late. So I'm like, well, my class, my Saturday, I'll be in school. But I remember one day walking to class, and I just hadn't slept, because I was doing all this homework and everything. And then I thought, I am blessed to be able to have this opportunity, because I know in many countries I would not be able to. And so I just would always have that attitude, and think of my dad, who came to this country as a bracero, and working in the fields, cleaning houses, all the different jobs that I had. I just kept thinking, this is such a privilege that I'm even able to do this. So that kept me going. I'm thinking, if I could work in the fields and clean houses and all of the different things that my parents have overcome, leaving their families in Mexico, I can do this, and challenging myself. And sometimes, Gustavo, like you were saying, certain words, and this is already, being a professional and everything, but in the world of academia, they just, they're used to certain language. And I realize now, because we help low-income students apply to college, even when I say, oh, a major in tuition and all these different words, it's like foreign language to some of our students, because we start working with them in junior high and in high school. And so just know, first class, we're talking about literature reviews. And I was thinking, gosh, I haven't been in school in a while. The last time I did a literature review, and everybody was like, yeah, we're going to work on literature reviews and just everything, becoming a student again. But I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong learner. So being in class, I just love professors. I love all the knowledge. I love all the shared. I love being in a classroom. I love classmates. And so I just love that environment. And there was students who had just graduated from college. And then there were students like myself who had returned. And so, those relationships that we developed, I loved that also, because we would be talking about, whether we were talking about research or data or assessment, evaluation, or specialties. I focused on Latinos in higher education, and there was just so much to talk about. Absolutely loved it. I would say what was hardest for me was navigating all of my different roles in time management. And so there wasn't a lot of self-care during that time. I was hardly sleeping, but I was trying to stay on top of, everything, work and reports that were due at work, and then everything that was due with grad school. But I would literally just take a day at a time, because when you think of everything, it's very overwhelming, everything you have to do. And so, every night I would say, thank you, Diosito, thank you, God, that I have this experience, that I'm healthy, and just take a day at a time. So I would say the positives are just how you learn and grow as a person, and the relationships that you make with professors and with your classmates, all the literature that there is to read, and the research that's been done that you can learn about. And it's just really an amazing experience. I would encourage everyone to pursue a master's degree if they are able to.
I love your attitude, and it's inspiring to hear about. So thank you for sharing that. And Gustavo, what did you find surprising, positive and negative?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the negative and with the positive. Perhaps something that was surprising negatively was just like how inherently isolating the process is. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're the one who has to do, your own work. You do your writing, your own reading, your own analyses, and you have to spend hours and hours in the library by yourself in order to do these readings and truly comprehend that stuff. Also, it's like along with that, it's like the different class sizes was also a huge negative surprise for me. right? So coming from a big lecture hall from like 100 students or something like that to like having a class with 8 people was truly surprising. And then now here at UCLA, one of the classes we only had 6 people. And it's just like, wow, that's not what I'm used to. I don't know how to deal with this. There's a lot more, expected of me since there's less people. You know what I mean? It's more like expectation to like talk and stuff like that. So that's kind of a negative surprise. It's not a bad thing, but it was just like it shocked me in the sense like I wasn't used to prepared for that. Right. But positive, also similar to what Anna said earlier in her answer, was just like I didn't realize how much I would love this. Even though it is inherently, isolating. But it's like I said earlier, I love to read, but now it's more directed reading. And then it's like because I read, now I've become a better writer. And because I'm a better writer and a better reader, I become a better speaker. So that's kind of been like this positive surprise of how all these things are sort of related to each other, right? It's sort of like dynamic process in which if you want to become a better writer, we have to go back to reading, right? And thinking. And so that's kind of been a surprise for me as well, just how much fun I would be having. Because like whereas in the past, like in undergrad, you take a certain class, like let's say abnormal psychology or something like that, or criminology, for example, you have to do readings based on those topics, right? But now that I got into research in my master's and now here at PhD, it's like now I do the readings that I want to do, right? And I get to choose, how much or how in depth I get to read them, which book chapters to read. And so that's kind of thrilling as well, because now like I take ownership of my work and I take ownership of my knowledge and my learning. And so that's been an incredibly positive experience as well. So yeah, just to sum up, graduate school is inherently isolating, but it can be fun. And because now you direct your own learning. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. And both of you, Diana and Gustavo, have made it clear that it's very hard, but it's so worth it. And you felt that way too, didn't you, Angie?
Yeah, yes, it is. And this is something, I think off the bat, once I started, like, the first question is I got in, but can I really finish? I think that was always like in the back of my head. But I think as I was going through my program semester by semester, I loved every semester a little bit more. I really enjoyed the fact that the professors cared. I really enjoyed the fact that that I enjoyed my program. I was surprised. I really was. And yes, it's hard, but I don't know if this will make sense, but it helps when you have a passion for something. It makes it easier, and not necessarily easy, but easier, if that makes sense. I was able to, like, Gustavo said, you're focused for my program. A lot of my classes, they were kind of still research based. We had to do research papers, right? And when we did have the opportunity to choose like our own topic, I always went back to criminal justice, what I was good at. And I read through those articles fast. I was so my attention was just like there. And it's just so I was able to notice that, when you have and you care for something, you will put your whole effort into it. And I mean, it was crazy, I'm not proud, but in high school, I didn't have the best GPA. Undergrad, my GPA was a lot better, and then grad was like the best. I graduated with distinction. I would have never thought that, and it was just to show like I actually tried my best because I actually cared. And that's the thing, when you're looking for a program, of course you want to choose one that you have a passion for, So I think that was it. Like, yes, it was hard, but at the same time, it wasn't, because I loved it. And I enjoyed the research. I enjoyed the reading. I enjoyed the writing, everything. I truly enjoyed it. I can't really think of, I'll be honest, nothing negative. The only thing that pops up is I was in my program when COVID hit. So I was so bummed out. The fact that we don't have cohorts, it's semester by semester, but I was able to meet so many people that still had like a passion similar to mine and in my program. And I was able to, build these relationships and friendships. And then boom, COVID hit and we can't even sit next to each other, So that was a bummer. And if I want to be honest, I think that's the only bummer for me through my program. Because, you know, like Gustavo said, yes, it can be very isolating, but I enjoyed it because I was able to control my time. This is where I learned how to time manage. If I want to be honest, I was able to really like, okay, I have class from here to here. I have work from this time to this time, my other job from this time to this time. So when am I gonna work around? And, you know, but of course you need to take care of yourself, self-care, of course, you know, or you'll get burnt out. But, you know, reality was like, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that I was able to really limit the time with other things and just focus on this. That was my priority. But yeah, that was my positive / negative experience.
Yay. I love it. I love it. Well, so I think we've already been talking about some of the challenges, but is there anything that you'd like to talk? I know, Diana, you already mentioned one of the ways that you overcame some of your challenges was to take it day by day, you know, just one day at a time and not try to look at the whole thing. Is there anything else that you want to share along these lines?
I think I wish that somebody had sat down with me, and even though I'm a professional on campus, just talked about the process of, you know, if you're going to start off the master's in education program, you're going to start, you're going to take some research classes, you're going, you know, just talk to me about at the end, if you're going to do a thesis or you're going to do a project or you're going to do a comprehensive exam, what the differences in the three are, what is your passion from the very beginning in your classes, start saving those articles. Nobody sat down and talked to me. I applied, I was accepted. And then that first semester, my advisor, faculty advisor was on sabbatical. So I reached out to another professor and they said, oh, Diana, you're fine. Just, you know, pick your classes, you're fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine. No, I'm like, I want to know, I want someone to meet with me, please. So actually a student who had been in our program at Live Oak High School, who had came to Chico State and graduated, and then was working in our office, had started the master's program. So she went from being my student to, because she was a year ahead of me, when I started, she ended up advising me, which I told her, I love that we have switched roles and I am now, you're advising me. So she said, Diana, I recommend this professor take this class before this class. And so, you know, just really asking for help, asking questions. I didn't know what I didn't know because I had never done a master's program. But now looking back, if somebody were new, you know, if somebody was coming back, especially somebody that was returning to school that maybe wasn't used to a student portal. We didn't have a student portal when I, you know, got my bachelor's degree. Obviously, I'm familiar with it because I work on campus. But I'm thinking if I was an advisor for the education program, then I would talk about the whole program, you know, all the different literature that you're reading, start saving some of those articles, bookmarking them because you can need them in the future. And then a thesis, that's what this will look like. A project, that's what this will look like. What are your passions? Start reading about that. What are your questions? You know, could we narrow that down to thesis statements? And then just sort of like, you know, a student portal, this is what it looks like literally like that basic, some of those things, because there were some people in my class that were like, I haven't been in school for, you know, 10 years, 15 years, and it's so different now. And so anytime that I talk to somebody, whether it's pursuing their, you know, 2-year degree, 4-year degree, master's degree, then I just try to, let's start with the basics. What do you know? Oh, you already know this, and then continue to just build, you know, those building blocks and not assume that they already know them. So I asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love that you know, just went to the next source and went, okay, somebody who's already started this. If, you know, when you weren't able to get that information from your advisor on sabbatical, then you went to the next, and then you went to the next, and you just didn't stop. And but you know what you talk about reminds us in graduate studies that we need to get the word out, that you can come and talk to us about those things, and that we need to share that information in many, many different ways so that people know, and they have different ways of finding that information, you know. But just knowing that they can come and talk to us with, you know, I don't know this, you know, because so many people don't know the answers, because that's, you know, you don't go to school because you know everything. You go to school to learn. So
Yes.
I
Even
love,
applying for graduation, I happened to mention it one day in class, and literally all the students around me who at the time were teaching, they go, "We were supposed to apply for graduation? How are we supposed to know that?" And then
right,
the professor in that class goes, "Oh, hasn't your advisor, did they not let you know about any of those deadlines?" And so they learned just because I happened to mention that I had just applied, and they go, "Oh, but we need proof of that," because, you know, they were going to get an increase in pay because they were teaching. And so I think in some programs, there's assumptions that the students already know what they're supposed to do. And so that's why I start with the basic of, do you know this? Okay, let's continue to build in the way, you know, what it is that you're gonna have to do to be a successful graduate.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Anything you want to add, Gustavo?
Yeah, if I can add two things, one academic, one personal. In an academic sense, being in like as a bachelor student, as you're like a consumer of knowledge, right? You're reading the books, you're reading the articles, you're sitting in a chair and the professor's lecturing at you. But in graduate school and during my master's, this had a lot of challenges learning this. It's like, how do I switch from being a consumer of knowledge to then being a producer of knowledge? Right. So now it's up to me to come up with a research question, to analyze the data, and then write a paper. And now that's going to be in textbooks, hopefully. Like it's like how like that mind switched right from a student to like professor basically has been the biggest challenge, and I'm still dealing with that now. But I think it's just a matter of like time, right? And you have to like I feel like I don't know if this will be the case, but I feel like the further I get away from my bachelor's, I feel like maybe it'll get easier to go into this process of producer of knowledge. But I'm not sure. I'm not there yet. So I can't tell you how to overcome that because I'm still in that process. I'm still wrestling with those two identities basically. But the personal one, it probably has been one of the biggest challenges. It's like, how do you explain graduate school to your parents who have never, you know, like my mom, my dad didn't finish, you know, grade school. My mom didn't finish high school. So it's like, how do you in Mexico, right? So how do you describe that to them? How do you describe the peer review process to your dad who's a truck driver? Like I don't know. And so I've dealt with that, you know, so hard. And I told my dad, like, yeah, the teacher program, it's 5 to 6 years. He's like, 5 to more school? Like how do you do that? And then, you know, I told them psychology, so they still think, you know, I'm doing like counseling or therapy, but no, Dad, I'm doing social psychology, emphasis in political psychology. So explaining that to them has been one of the biggest challenges, right? And also explain to them, you know, just like I'm not in there for the money because there's not a lot of money in academia, you know, unless you go private or something. But I don't like private. So like I remember one day my mom, and it's like not that long ago, she looked at me. She was like, "When you become a professor, will you make enough money to buy me a home?" And I was like, "Mom, that's been my dream ever since I could. But like, I'm gonna try my best, you know." So it's like I feel like there's also some pressure to give back to your family as well. That's also a big challenge for me. It's like I moved away to the other side of the state, you know what I mean? And I'm left my family, so that's been a big challenge as well. But now that I'm older, I get to talk to my mom and dad. Like, how did you guys do it? How did you manage to come to a whole new country and make something of yourself? And I'm like super scared that I moved away 6 hours ago in the same state. You know what I mean? I can speak the language, you know. So it's like I had to deal with that as well. But that's kind of been the biggest challenge, you know, like how you communicate what you do to your parents who have no idea in your family. And so one of the ways I've overcome that is by applying what I'm learning to what they know, right? And so, for instance, I'll give you a really good example. I'm currently working on an essay on describing this theory of social psychology called social identity theory, which pretty much explains that people get their positive self-esteem by identifying with groups, right? So I'm learning that. And so how do I apply that to something that my family knows and my cousins know? So I'm applying it to a very famous movie, Chicano movie called Blood In, Blood Out, Found the Honors, it's called. And so I'm writing an essay tying psychology to this childhood movie that all my family knows. And so I'm doing that just so I can show them like what I do for a living. Like this is what I do, right? And so that's kind of how I'm overcoming it by applying what I'm learning to what my parents and my family know. But still, it's a big challenge trying to describe, you know, for instance, the peer review process for my dad, or explain to them that I'm actually a social psychologist and not a therapist. But I still think that's the challenge that I'm still navigating through as I move forward in my studies. But I'm sure eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, and you just keep communicating and you keep
Mhm.
drawing from personal life and your education and melding those two.
Exactly.
That's great. Angie, how about you, for challenges and how you overcame them? Anything you want to add?
For challenges, I think the main one was just struggling with the idea of like, am I gonna finish? Like, am I capable enough to finish my master's program? Yeah, even though I enjoyed it, you know, stressful, but and hard, but like I was still scared, you know, and I think the fear never left. It never did. I just had to learn to live with it. It was just, you know, something, but I think feeling like I didn't belong. I just honestly, I think it just, I finally was able to put the word imposter syndrome to what I was feeling, what I had been feeling for years. And I feel like, you know, over time, things just got more harder. So it was just, I was feeling it more. It was a little bit more intense. But I think one thing was just like, this is an opportunity and I'm going to take it. I felt like, which sounds crazy, but I felt like I had to learn how to write all over again because it's different, you know, it's a little, professors expect more from you. Professors want to see, you know, specific type of way, the way you do your research, you know, and they're also, everybody has their own style of, you know, I have to also figure out what they like, what they're expecting, you know, and I think the biggest thing was communicating with them. It was a back and forth. When I was struggling, I was vocal about it. I would tell the two professors that I struggled with the most in their classes. I also love those classes the most at the end of the day, but like, I would tell them I'm struggling. You know, after the first paper I ever submitted, you know, I didn't get the best score. And if it did not feel nice. And right away I started like overthinking it. And I was like, okay, relax. Like, this is one of many papers you're gonna write. Now go talk to your professor and ask him what exactly he's looking for. I go more, I feel like I understand better, like, okay, tell me exactly what it is you want me to do, and I can follow that. And, you know, this professor was a little more vague, you know, but again, that's their style. And I was just asking for information and I got it. I went back and my papers the scores just kept getting higher and higher. So, you know, I think it was the best thing for me. And honestly, anytime you feel like you're struggling, always communicate with your professors, always let them know how you're feeling, you know, in regards to like the class. Like I said, I had amazing professors that became mentors for me. I was even able to share, like, I don't feel smart. That was the first time I had ever, you know, said it to a professor, you know, and, you know, the way he described it to me was just like, it's not about being smart. It's about working with what you have. And you can be the smartest person and not put in the work and not get the results you want. But if you're going to work really hard for what it is that you want, you're going to succeed, you know? And that to me was mind blowing. And like, you know, him also sharing his experience in grad school, saying that like him and his buddy were scared that they weren't going to make it in grad school. And I was like, like, you know, my mentor, this person I, you know, look up to and was for a while intimidating, you know, like someone I would always just say is super smart still to this day. I was like, you? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, and it's normal. And I was like, okay, you know, and being able to really like, I guess, explain how you're feeling when, you know, with their classes specifically. And again, being able to create relationships with professors and eventually having great mentors. I feel like that's what helped me overcome, still have a little bit of imposter syndrome in a different way. But I feel like that was able to help me reassure myself that I was where I was supposed to be. And all I was going to do is do my best. And my best was going to be enough. I knew I had to work a little harder, and I did. I knew I had to take longer in my readings because my first language was not English, you know, and I just knew I needed to work a little harder, and I did. And I feel like with the help of professors, with, you know, working hard, support a family, that's what helped me overcome and even eventually graduate with my master's.
I love that. I love that. And just, you communicated. All of you did a lot of communicating when it was necessary, and that was helpful. I love that. Well, okay, so now, how did your program, your master's degree, prepare you for a career path after graduation? Diana?
I think for me, directing a program that helps first generation college students, we serve 1,325 and 24 local schools, 6th grade through 12th grade. I think just the fact that I was in a master's program, to our students that come into the office when I'd go out to the schools talking about it, serving as a role model, because when I was in high school and when I was in college, there wasn't a lot of students in master's programs or directors of programs that looked like me. And so I think sharing my story, even when I'd be in the office, the students were like, wait, you just had an exam. You just had, like, they thought it was really cool that I also was in school. So, and the master's in education, my program, helping students get into education, it was just perfectly aligned. And then I just loved everything that I was learning in the program. I would say also Professor Dr. Ann Schulte is an amazing professor. I'm absolutely in awe of her. She's wonderful. And I think I would sit in class, kind of like Angie said, when I turned in papers, because different professors, you have to kind of figure out what it is. I literally had a professor, it was more, he was worried about, or not worried about, he prioritized the content of the papers that you were submitting, the research that you were doing, but he was a little lenient on the formatting of your paper. And then like Dr. Schulte was like, yes, she was all about the content, what you're researching, what you're writing, and the formatting. And so I remember I went above and beyond, wrote this amazing paper, and then lost a point because of the formatting. Because at the end I was like, oh my gosh, this is due. And then I was devastated. And she laughed and she's like, Diana, that was an amazing paper. Don't worry about the point you lost. I'm like, no, because of the formatting. But I would say the biggest compliment that she gave was I ran into her last semester and she said, Diana, I've been thinking about you and was wondering if you'd be interested in teaching the small rural education course. That is the biggest compliment ever, because I think she's absolutely amazing. But because we serve so many different schools, she said, you have a lot of experience in rural education in our areas. And so it just prepared me to assess our program. Were we evaluating it correctly? Are these the best services for our students? What are the needs of the students? Talking about culturally responsive pedagogy. And so I just was able to look back at all of our curriculum and assess it, our programming, our events, our evaluations. There was a career assessment class in one of the electives that I took that we use now to help our students, to decide what sort of career or major they might want to go into. So every single class that I was in, I was thinking of our program, I was thinking of our students, I was thinking of our schools. And then the program also was wonderful because I was working with so many teachers, administrators. And so it was great publicity for the program because they're like, what is this program? And, what is a federally funded TRIO program? And so, I mean, it just went hand in hand with my program, with the students, with the community that we serve. And I just absolutely loved it.
Wow, they both fed each other, basically. I love that. That's very cool. And how about you, Gustavo?
Yeah, if I can, I'm gonna switch the question a little bit and
Yeah.
say, how did your time at Chico State prepare you?
Yeah.
I've always said that Chico State offered a PhD, I'd do it at Chico State, hands down, without a doubt. I absolutely love what Chico State represents and what it does for the students, especially for low-income first-generation college students, Latino backgrounds. But it helped me tremendously. The faculty are great, but also the people who work there, right? I remember meeting Tasha for the first time, Tasha Alexander, and she has been an amazing mentor for me. And the first time somebody believed in my capabilities, and she kind of gave me free range to help the student support services program I was working at the time. Kind of changed the mentorship program, kind of the way that I saw. And so it's like just having somebody believe in you, right? At such an early stage in your career, giving you the kind of the free reins to use your knowledge that you're learning and better this program. That has been extremely helpful. And not necessarily in my career path, but more in believing in myself as well. And so along those lines, also my mentor, Dr. Neil Schwartz, has been a tremendous help in developing me as a scholar, as a thinker, and as a researcher, right? And so that's all that because of the programs that are offered at Chico State as well. Like I said, beginning of this transmission, it's like I wish Adelante had a program when I was there, right? Because I didn't have this kind of programs. I didn't know about EOP or SSS or other different programs. But it was definitely through mentorship at Chico State in which I kind of was able to better my path, and I became more confident in myself through my mentorship through Tasha. I became a better scholar through my mentorship with Dr. Schwartz. It also, like, I did my bachelor's and my master's there, so I spent like almost 7 or 8 years at Chico State, so that's definitely a piece of my heart. But I started off picking up trash and recycling for the AS recycling program. I'll never forget that. I think I don't know if this stirs, but there was a huge banner outside the BMU of me in my sophomore year in undergraduate in front of trash. And it's like, that's how I started. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's unbelievable how now I'm in the stage where I'm overlooking like Bel Air is like right down the street. Like I'm looking at it on my walk here. It's like, I came from a trailer park and, now I'm here. And it's all because of my experience at Chico State, the mentors that I've learned, that I've gathered and taught me so many things. And also, hey, shout out to Ace Fegler. And so and so it's like, it's kind of crazy how like the experience at Chico State, the people, the programs, and also the opportunities to explore yourself as a scholar and as a person, and how much has sort of shaped you into being like who I am, right? And so I owe everything to Chico State. And so I'm glad I got there. And again, just to sum up, it's the mentorship and the opportunities to believe myself that's shaped my path as a graduation.
I love that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Gustavo. And
Mhm.
Angie, what you had said earlier, about the mentors, really sounds like what Gustavo was talking about. Other things that you might want to add as far as how your degree sort of prepared you for where you're at right now?
I agree with everything Gustavo said. I think what I also enjoyed about my master's program was that you do have class with a lot of people with a different age range and different experience. And I feel like I learned so much from that, and I just took it with me. I feel like it wasn't just reading the books, it wasn't just learning and listening to the professor, lecture and apply it, and whatnot in little groups. I feel like it was also learning from students and learning from each other, which I thought was great, So it was like you get to for the price of one, which I really enjoyed. What I really liked about the program was that because public admin, I feel like is broad, it can be applied in a lot of different departments. I feel like that's where I actually started looking into higher education. That's when I started doing my research, mixing a little bit of my passion of criminal justice and eventually higher education, which was something that kind of crossed my path, down the line. That's when I started doing my research in higher education in prisons, and that's something that sparked a huge interest, a huge passion in me. And also being working at Chico State, going to school at Chico State, I had the opportunity to work at Chico State. That's when I started, that was the first time I became an advisor. I never knew anything about it. All I knew is I was advised, I was never the advisor. And I knew it was a lot of work. And that's also kind of added on to me learning and discovering this new passion of mine, higher education, which is where I am now, working still in higher education. And I think it was kind of like the journey / the program, how, things it kind of just fell really into place, if that makes sense. And then Adelante came in and, it was just like things were kind of being added on one over the other. And I feel like it was just a mixture of a lot of things of why I am still in higher education. And I know I still will probably stick to higher education. But I also want to continue with criminal justice. So yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like it was a lot that kind of helped me be where I'm at in this current time. So.
Yeah, and we'll see where you go, huh? I love that. Well, okay, so Diana, start us off with if there was one thing that you could have been told or that you could tell students about how to succeed, what would it be? I think you kind of talked a little bit about this before, but do you want to give us your take on that?
I think opportunities and events like today that you're hosting are wonderful, just because it's a very real, very honest conversation. And resources on campus like Adelante, Kate was mentioning that Joanna started a cohort, a class this year. And so thank you so much for providing these spaces, for providing these programs, for serving students, for understanding that there might be questions that, that they don't know, they don't even know to ask. You don't know what you don't know. And so I would say, ask questions, develop relationships with the students in your class, develop relationships with your professors, reach out, because there is a lot of help. And so a lot of times I'll meet students who are just trying to figure out and navigate college on their own when there is so many services. Like I literally went this morning to Accessibility Resource Center because there's some students who I know could use their help, found out more about their resources, and then came back and was telling the students how to do the intake form and the disability verification form. So just ask for help, ask for resources, ask questions, take a day at a time. And there's a lot of people that will help support you. And pursue what you're passionate about. What do you want to learn more about? And I also agree when Gustavo was saying, the more I read, the more articulate I became, the more it made me a stronger writer. And so there's so much information out there, so much literature, so much research that has been done and research that needs to be done. So I just really encourage everyone who's pursuing a higher education, whether it's a bachelor's or a master's or a doctorate, to just take a day at a time and continue to learn and grow and give back to everyone else, and think of your community, because everyone's watching. And so, back home, your family, your community knows that you've gone on to college. So go back to your high school, talk to your neighbors, talk to your cousins, talk to everyone about a higher education. And yes, you might not graduate and be making millions of dollars, but I definitely guarantee that it is life-changing. I've seen in one generation, my parents only having a 3rd and 6th grade education. We dealt with a lot of alcoholism. We dealt with a lot in our family. So school was always just a safe haven to me. I felt very safe there. I felt that I could learn, I could grow. And then I'd kind of go home to chaos, little Mexico. So I was navigating these two worlds. And I share my story all the time with students. So now it is a very different environment. My home is very calm, full of love, full of support. We have dinners of family. We talk about our days. We talk about research, what we're learning in school. So it's just completely different in one generation. So it really is life-changing. I absolutely love education. And as I mentioned, I'm a lifelong learner. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I am honored that you even asked to be in this amazing space. And so thank you.
Well, what a valuable resource you are for us here at Chico State, and we are so grateful for you being willing to be part of this. So thank you so much, Diana. And Gustavo, what
Yes.
would you give as advice, or what do you wish you had heard?
Yeah. I would say your success is defined a lot by your mentorships. Definitely. So I owe all my success to my mentors. I spoke of Dr. Patrick Johnson, who opened the doors for research to me, of Tasha Alexander, who through mentorship led me to believe in myself, right? Dr. Neil Shorts, who sort of helped me develop into the scholar that I am now. And of course, you all, Adelante, right? Kate, Rosemary, Sharon, thank you for giving me the job that I had that year. Also learned a lot from the SLC family, from Don. And so it's like, I wish somebody would have told me earlier than I did, and I learned this. I learned this on my own. I wish somebody would have told me that the power of mentorships, the power of mentors, right? In various different domains, not just academic. You don't just need to have an academic mentor, but also a personal mentor or somewhere in between, right? Because like those would definitely define your success. Those are the people who generally tend to be older than you, but they don't have to be. And they know things that you may not know, and they open the doors to a lot of different possibilities that you never even thought of. Right. And so I'll keep it short, but I'll just say, yeah, the power of mentorship. Power of mentorship.
Oh, that's so awesome, Gustavo. And what I love about it is that you went and sought out mentors. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
you didn't wait for things to happen. And then when you did have to wait for things, you persevered. So I just love your stories. They are so inspirational.
It's that Chico State tenacity.
Thank you, Gustavo. And how about you, Angie? If there was one thing you could have been told, or you could tell students about how to succeed, what would that be?
I think don't let your fears stop you from pursuing your dreams, your goals. Like I said, I feel like fear limits a lot of us from doing, even making the first move. And, you know, whether it's applying, you know, whether it's even applying for a scholarship. I never applied for scholarship. And when I was working for Adelante, I would tell all my mentees, do it, just do it. You don't know, but just do it. And because you don't know, right? And but you're taking your chance, you know, just it's a first step. Don't let, you know, your fear prevent you from doing amazing things. Live with your fear, you know, just, yeah, you can still have it, but you know what, it is not gonna hurt. Just try it, apply to that scholarship. You don't know if you're gonna get it. But what if you do, you know, apply to that school. If you want to try grad school, apply to the schools that, you know, grab your attention. You won't know unless you try. And even the worst thing you can get is a no, but even if you get a no, you just reapply again, you know, and you just keep doing it until you get there. Like I said, there's always gonna be fears. We're all gonna have fears, you know, but I feel like don't let your fears stop you from pursuing anything that you want to do. And like Diana mentioned, ask. I think if there's something proud of is that I always asked. Was I scared? Yeah. But I remember the reason why I asked was because my first year as a freshman at Chico State, I hate math. And we were in a math class, and I still remember it was a remedial math class. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand he was going too fast. He would write and then erase. And I told him, I raised my hand and I told him, whoa, 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 whoa. Like we all looked confused. Nobody was saying anything. I'm like, look, I'm paying for this school. I'm going to take out as much as I can from here. So from there on out, I just started asking questions, right? And I had a student right after that go to me like, thank you for asking, because I was so lost and I was not going to ask. That, I think that honestly motivated me to just keep asking and never end asking questions, because if you don't know, you don't know. And we're not born, obviously, like knowing everything. It's going to take time. And therefore, whatever you learn, keep passing it down, you know, keep feeding others that information. And that's really how you're going to succeed, and you're going to help others succeed as well. Like I said, just asking questions and just trying. You won't know unless you try, really. And like I said, even the worst thing you can get is a no, and you just keep trying again. But that's really how I think it's all about succeeding, just asking, you know, beyond questions. There was a point I didn't even care if I was annoying. I was like, I need to know and make sure I understand before I leave this classroom what I have to do. Because you know, it was about you. It's your program, it's your time, it's your future, it's your dream, right? But yeah, that's what I would tell students.
Wow. I just have to say that that's such wise advice, and you're such a great example. And the three of you are amazing and inspiring. And I just want to thank all of you for being here. I could go on for hours, but we have run out of our time. So I just want to tell you thank you, and thank you for continuing to inspire us who are around you and have gotten to work with you. And we are very excited to share what you are offering to our students. And so I just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting us, Rose. Really appreciate it. It's always nice to see everybody.
Thank you.
So glad
Yeah.
this is recorded. This is going to be incredibly valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
so much for the opportunity.
yeah, we just, oh, we're gonna ask you back. Thank you.
Anything for adelante.
Oh,
Yeah.
y'all are wonderful.
Oh,
And thank you for being here. And we will send you the link when we get this recording posted. And we appreciate you all. Now, go and relax, everybody. Okay,
Yeah.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
everybody.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.